out in the field and make them work for you. Can anybody say what the most important thing you've learned so far is? Anybody?
I've used twice for,
Yes.
when we went to the class of where would you like to position
Uh-huh.
your listing. I really like that
For
drill.
positioning
And
it?
that is- Yes.
Okay.
And that has helped because that's giving them the choice
Uh-huh.
and kind of like, okay, where do you want to be? But there's the range
Uh-huh.
and where do you want to place it.
And what discussion might you have had leading up to that?
What do you mean?
Well, that's great. Knowing where they want to position it is going to help you know part of their motivation and what's most important to them.
Yes.
Time, price, or convenience.
Right.
And you find that to be effective in that respect too?
Right, because we may have just, because then we can turn around and go back, because if they said, time is of the essence, they're underneath their gun, they didn't, they have this other property, or they need to move out of town, and then they place it at the very top, then that gives you the tools to go back and say, okay, let's go back to what your, thoughts were as far as your timeline on selling it.
Mhm.
And now we're putting it at the very top of the price line.
Mhm.
Where, let's put into place the, maybe that opens the door for price reductions so that then, you can let them know, okay, this is what we're gonna do.
Mhm.
If we don't get an offer in 2 weeks, then we're gonna go here, and we're gonna go here, and this is what we're gonna price.
Okay. And during that initial discussion, you found out probably what their underlying emotion is. Not only what's driving the sale, but the emotion behind that driving. And that's a good time when you do have to reposition it, is to just remind them, remember our goal is to get you down close to your granddaughter. So if we do this and this, we can get there much faster, kind of thing, driving home that emotional
Right.
reason.
It opens the door, right, like you said, because people aren't putting their house on the market just to put it on the market. There's a reason.
There's a reason. Yeah. Good, Judy. And you found it to be easy to say, easy to do?
Yes,
And
it's just
effective?
another tool, instead of saying, okay, this is where you need to put it, this is where
Mhm.
the market shows your house. It's just, I think that it gives them a better offer, it's giving them more power.
Okay. Before you say that, do you have a range or do you give them a range?
No, we go over the comps, I have the comps right
Okay,
there.
all right.
And so, they see where the
Mhm.
houses are that are selling right there in, direct comps for their house.
Okay.
And where do they wanna place it?
Excellent. Good. Anybody else want to say what your experience has been or what you picked up so far that might be helpful?
My buyer dropped 12.5.
Oh,
My
drop
seller.
25?
12.5.
Oh, 12.5?
Yeah, I left a
buyer?
message when I was up there last week, and I said, I just told her, I said, we really need to start talking about price. And she said, I know. And I left it at that, because I
Mhm.
knew she was closing on Thursday. And so I just kind of left it at that. She goes, I know, I can't afford two payments on, I can't afford two homes with costs. And I said, yeah, that's a good reason. And she said, I've got to get moved. And I said, okay. Remember you said it was an emotional seller. So she called me Monday morning and said, okay, I'm ready.
Good.
And
That makes me excited. See, now you have the motivation, see?
yeah,
And
but
it takes time, see, patience on your part. That's
yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
I told her, I said, oh, okay. And she said, what are we looking for? I said, well, we're looking to get, down in the we need at least 10,000. She goes, well, I was gonna do 12.5. And I said, perfect,
Good for you.
Good.
perfect. So we got
Wonderful.
down in that range that we need to be in. And, but it had to be her decision because she was emotionally tied to the property.
Mhm.
How long ago
They
did you
do.
do the price reduction?
Yesterday,
Oh, just
Is that Buggy
yesterday?
Lane?
Buggy Lane,
Yeah,
Buggy
it's a
Lane.
cool house, I like that.
It's a cool house.
Yeah.
All the inspections are done, it's clean as a whistle, sell it. It's ready to go.
The motivation's there, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Awesome.
Nick, did you have a comment?
Just that, she did say instead of using price, put it as marketing, positioning in the market, or don't use the term price, use position, placement, marketing.
Right.
Anything but price, because it kind of takes the edge off of it. I haven't had a chance to implement it, but it makes sense.
Mhm. It's kind of like calling a house a home or a home a house, using the right term to remove that emotion from it, right? Okay. We're on page 53, and we're going to talk about built-in market repositioning, exactly what we've been talking about already. Overpriced listings are, unfortunately, a reality at some point in the career of most agents. Markets move fast. Numbers that worked even just 10 days before may become outdated. You may be motivated to take an overpriced listing in an area you want to get into. Referrals are the bread and butter of our business, and you may take an overpriced listing in order to get a seller with great referrals potential into your database. My personal opinion is, and it's easy to say, I guess from my standpoint, I would work as diligently as I could to get the initial market impact for a listing and to have it priced as closely as you think, where you think it's going to sell. And I think most agents develop very quickly a feeling where things are going to sell. And the closer you are to that price, the more quickly it's going to sell, and the higher the percentage of selling price to listing price is going to be. Okay. Awareness is key. Be proactive. Set the stage for future market repositioning in the listing presentation. Discuss initial market position instead of asking price. Initial implies that it is the starting point. So our initial price placement for your property is going to be thus and such. And I think Judy had a really good technique for the way that you said that, Judy.
Or that, just preparing them to,
Mhm.
if it doesn't sell, that we're ready to drive it on. Is that-
Yes, and even before that, what you said when you, and I can't remember your exact words, but it sounded really good when you said it a while ago about letting them choose.
Oh, yes, right. Yeah, because ultimately, it's up to them.
It is
I mean,
up to
it
them.
gives them more power. They feel like they
Yes.
have, like, anytime they feel empowered.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I always want my clients to feel that they're leading the way, even though people say shut up.
What if they need some guidance? What if they're just, even though it's their decision, we have a duty to spread that buffet table with as much information as we can and help them make a wise decision. How do you guide them if they're really over the top?
Well, you need to go with a good seer, because we don't determine the price, they don't. No one does except for the market. And you don't have any better tool than what the listings are, because that's your competition, and then when it's sold. In
Mhm.
fact, the pendings are the best, because then that shows if something's been on the market for 50 days, and you can show them the history, saying, okay, they started out here, and then they had to, do
Mhm.
three price reductions, or this is where they started out to begin with. Look at the other ones that are comparable to that, and they actually sold for a little bit more,
Mhm.
because they placed it properly.
Mhm.
Because we all know aged properties, they're deadly.
Yes. Okay. One of the things that it said here is markets move fast. For somebody that's been in the business as long as John Sweeney has, and some of the people that have been around for a long time, Mitz has been here for a long time, Melanie's been for a long time, you've seen different markets. For those of you that have been in the market for the last 10 or 15 years, you've seen some market changes. Somebody said it the other day, I can't remember, seems like it was in an office meeting, but when a market begins to change, it changes very rapidly. And I think preparing people that whatever's going on today may not be what's going to go on tomorrow, and help them make decisions that are best in that respect. Anybody want to talk about market changes and what we're seeing right now? And yes.
Well, I remember from the market when it changed, and I heard this, I remember the day it changed. I remember where I was and what I was selling and where the market had. I had sold a house on Phelan in December, and the neighbor wanted to list, and he wanted to wait until April. And I said, well, I kind of feel like the market's kind of changing. This one sat for a long time. I think we need to get it listed. And then when he listed, he wanted to list it for $25,000 more than the house down the street sold. By that time, that market had fallen drastically.
Mm-hmm.
And that house, stayed on the market for quite some time, trying to get a price reduction out of him. But the point I want to make here is that when the market changes, I would hear people say you can only see it in the rearview mirror because it's gone. It wasn't something that gradually happened. You knew it was over because there was no more days like that day. It disappeared quickly.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't a changing market create some urgency, whether the market's going up or going down?
Yes.
I like the down market than the up market, to be honest with you.
Do you?
Because there's more people that it's easier to cultivate buyers, and it's easier to get a good deal for them, and they'll be happy the rest of their, their existence that they're in the house, and then you can resell their property at a profit. They always look like an impact in those markets.
How about from a listing standpoint?
It's tough. I remember having lots of listings, like 18 at a time, in last year.
Yeah.
Even the buyers, it's difficult with buyers as well in that market because they're competing with other buyers.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple offers on them.
And investors.
Investors.
From a listing standpoint, if you're in a descending market, and let's talk about this, even though we're not there, we could be, and we certainly have been before, and it's a very different market. What's the one thing when you are in a declining market and listing a property that you want to do?
You have to beat them to the bottom.
I'm sorry?
You have to beat them to the bottom of the price eventually.
Yes. In a case like that, it's better to list a little bit low because, especially if it's declining very quickly, it's going to go below where you are anyway, and chasing a price downhill is not a lot of fun, is it?
And likewise, when the market is hot, you couldn't figure out how much higher the
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. Very seldom do markets remain static for any length of time. I think the period that we've been in for the last few years where we have a lack of inventory has been pretty long for our market. What do you think, John? You have any comments?
The changes that occur, like you said, they do rapidly, and I know we have those unique circumstances whether it's going up or going down. It's like we're going down, you're chasing. The thing is to convince your client if you're in the downward market is that you get it priced right and sell it. It's tough. They
Yeah.
already think their house is worth more than everything else around to begin with.
Yes.
So it's probably coming to the table with enough material to educate them, to show them where you
Yes.
think the price should be.
Right. Okay, any other comments from anybody? Okay. If we're discussing the initial market position instead of the asking price, initial implies that it is a starting point that may change. Point out that market positioning is a moving target. Each new listing, sale, or competing home's repositioning will impact their listing. That's the reason they want to price well and move quickly on offers to get a sale. So here's a sample script. I know your goal is to net X number of dollars in X amount of time. If we see that in the first 2 to 3 weeks we have not received an offer, it's no one's fault. It's just the market telling us that things have changed and we need to change as a result. I would say if the market is beginning to change and you're seeing that, what's the best thing that you can do for your seller?
Convey
You
that
okay?
to them.
Yes, talk to them. Let them know what you see happening in the marketplace, and keep them updated as often as you need to, and I would say frequently. A market repositioning is not necessarily a negative. It sends a signal that this seller is ready to look at new offers. That price change can reinvigorate the listing and get an offer that a buyer didn't think they would consider at first. The next page, goal 5, earn the business and close. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. Closing is as much of a process as it is an event. In the best listing presentations, top agents assume the sale and use trial closes to collect a series of yeses all along the way. By the time they arrive at the end of the presentation, the final yes to sign the listing agreement feels like the only natural conclusion. How do you get those little yeses? By asking questions
That you already know the answer to.
that deserve a yes answer, right? Okay. Can you think of any that you've used, anybody? Little questions along the way? Like, how does this feel so far? Does this make sense? That kind of thing? Or if you have something specific at the time. But if you continually get their approval or their understanding in a positive way, or if they say, no, that doesn't make sense, or whatever, you can reiterate what you've said or re-educate them, bring them up to that point, and keep asking, does that make sense? Okay?
Even though it does make sense to them, not a lot of times, but they won't let you know that it does make sense. They won't admit it.
That it doesn't?
Yeah, they won't admit it. That's like, I hear what you're saying, but that doesn't mean I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
You can even put it in writing, sometimes that helps, when they hold it and see pictures and literature and comments and all that stuff, as far
Yeah.
as price is concerned. And they'll understand it blue as day, but they won't admit it to you. No, they'll just go with someone who will discount the commission and list it for what they want to list it for. They don't sit there for 120 days and you see the sign down in 3 months.
Yeah.
That's what I see in our market happening in the last, well, the second and third quarter of this year especially.
Okay, and do you think that that's a sign of weak agents that don't have the training and the gumption to lay out that buffet of facts? Ryan?
It could be a number of things, but yeah, that's probably strong. Yeah. Not necessarily weak, because like I mentioned last week, when you're slow in this business, you get desperate and you'll do anything. But what that does, it decreases your value as an agent. And because word does travel in this town, as we all know, that, oh, Sally at Century 21 will do it for 4%. Let's call them, they sold our neighbor's house. And people talk, and it'll bite you in the fanny, in my experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah. very hard to lay ground rules and stay by them, because sometimes you do have to flex. But, that's just been my case scenario this year. I'm very frustrated. But we'll get through it.
We will, and maybe we'll have some extra tools along the way through Century 21, excuse me, that will help in these kinds of situations where we have a tough market. I think all markets to some degree are tough, no matter what they are, because you're always trying to figure out and plan for whatever's going on at that time. And it can change rapidly. Okay. So when do you use your trial closes? And when you get yeses to those trial closes, what do you do? Do you just move forward, or if you've got the indication that people are ready to sign the listing, you just jump to that listing? What's the important thing here?
Get the signature.
A signature. Okay, so
You want to
when
use your pen
somebody,
or mine?
I'm sorry?
Would you like to use your pen or mine?
Well, yes, and make sure they've got their own so they can do it more quickly, right? If people are ready to sign a listing,
Stop talking.
stop talking and just get right to the point of doing that listing. If you've got some points that you need to make about something, you can make those at an appropriate time later on, and there may be those times. But to go on and on about the benefit of using you and the benefit of using your company when they're ready to sign, that's your whole goal. And when you've reached your goal, don't miss the opportunity, because we've all heard the stories of people that think they have to say everything there is to say, and they miss getting the listing because they frustrated the seller so much that they don't want to do business with them then. So once you reach that point, and how can you tell?
By their facial expressions or
Body language.
indentation.
Yeah, if they become restless, they seem anxious or eager, their demeanor has changed since the beginning, that might be body language. Yes, watching their watch or looking at the clock. Yeah, any of those things. So if you notice that going on, how are you going to handle it? What are you going to do?
Wrap it up.
Ask them?
No, wrap it up.
Yes, but maybe wrap it up very quickly and say, can you say, I get a feeling maybe you're ready to go straight to the listing agreement. Is this a good time? However you want to say it in your own way, I would ask them. I'm ready to sign right now if you are.
I'm ready to go to work.
I'm ready to go to work. Let's go to work. We're wasting time here. We could be working on getting a buyer for your property. Whatever. You'll know how to say it with the person that you're with, and having discovered a bit of their behavior and traits at that point. Okay? Okay, always be closing during your ABCDEs. Each one of your listing presentation goals represents an opportunity to close. Goal number 1 is accumulate the intelligence. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, it's important to me that you have had the opportunity to tell me everything you think is important about your property. Do you think there is anything else I need to know? Great. You mentioned that some particular part of your house was your favorite area in the house. I want to make sure that the photographer gives us lots of options for that area. When can I schedule the photographer to come in and get photos of the house? To make it easier for you, I can put my lockbox on the front door today, and then I can give the photographer a one-day code to access your house. That way you don't have to adjust your schedule for the photographer. Would that be helpful? Great. Do you have a spare key? I can put my lockbox on the door right now. Seems like more than a closing, doesn't it? that's a commitment at that point. How does that technique feel to you? Can you make that a comfortable thing?
Yeah, that's a good way to wrap it up. Just make sure you're including the details, like photographer, showing times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mr. and Mrs. Siller, I know that scheduling and managing repairs and contractors can take quite some time. I've got 2 solutions to make this process easier. First, I share a list of contractors with my clients. These are contractors that I know and trust, who I know will give you the same great service. Can I share that list with you? Great. Second, to make it easier to schedule appointments with these contractors, I can put my lockbox on your door today. As you schedule contractors, I can give them a 1-day code to access your house. That way we know exactly who is in your house. Would that be helpful? Great. Do you have a spare key? I don't know if we have that ability to do a 1-day code on our lockboxes for contractors.
We
do
have, we have what's called CBS codes.
Okay.
And, on your lockbox, if you open up your Supra and you look on your lockbox, if they have signed up at the MLS to be one of those vendors, then you have the ability to give them that 6-digit code that's next to your lockbox.
Okay.
And then they can access the house
Mhm.
through the Bluetooth and get in. And it sends you a message that so-and-so went in at this time and came out at that time. So you do have that ability, if you just have to look up the lockbox code on your phone.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have a comment?
I could get them in all at the same time.
I do
That way
too.
you're not inconveniencing the seller.
Okay.
My parents, I can get estimates.
Okay. Okay. I know we talked about this just the other day, that we were going to gather up a contractor list and have available. But I think it's really important as an agent to start building your team of people that you like to use, and have a home inspector, a pest inspector, maybe a general contractor, an electrician, a plumber, septic tank company, those kinds of things.
Does anybody have a good electrician? I've been asked that question so
Yes,
many times.
I just found one.
Who is it?
Joe Hugenroth gave it to me, and I've got his name.
Perfect.
Yeah, I've got his name and number. His name is, it's in my phone here.
Perfect.
Yeah,
When
I
you get a
just-
chance, just send that to me.
Yeah, just this last week I got it.
That's
so-
hard to find an
And I'm
electrician.
happy, I know.
I
Okay.
usually I do what so many people do. I either do a workplace text or I do an email, and somebody usually answers me back. Text works better than email because many people don't read their email. I think you'll get 1 or 2 responses from the email, but if you do a workplace text, then somebody in the office will answer you back.
If anyone wants it, it's Jack's Electric, and his number is 269-5872. And so far I've been pleased. He's reasonable and he answers when you call. Oh, him?
Yeah, I couldn't have it.
Oh,
Neither
wow.
could I.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He would actually tell me, go to somebody else. I'm like, okay.
Well,
This is a
maybe I
good-
hit it on the
this is a
right
good
day.
session.
You
Just
did
get
good.
numbers right
I
now.
had good luck, and he's
Yeah.
able to do it to
Yeah.
the next day.
I could never get a hold of him.
Wow, okay. Wow.
Okay.
So we need 2 or 3.
Right.
And having said that, Mandy, it's really important as you accumulate a list. There's 2 things. Everybody on your list needs to be a licensed contractor except for your home inspector, because they aren't licensed. But we have a company policy that if we're providing a list of contractors and vendors that do that kind of thing, they have to be licensed, okay? The other thing is that we can't tell the seller who they have to use. We can provide a list for them and say, these are people that we've used before and had a good experience with. So far, they've got our trust, or they've earned our trust, or however you want to say it, but you can't say you have to use this person.
And go to the state site, go to the state site and look up their name, see if they are licensed, cause a lot of them, their license is expired.
Yes, that happens too,
Or they're licensed for somebody else.
yeah. Okay. Okay, goal number 2 is to build trust. How have we talked about building trust before?
Keeping good communication with them.
Communication, and what's important, Thomas, about that communication? It's kind of the 2-in-1 thing.
It lets them know that they can rely on you at any time. If they need something or they have a question, you're there answering the phone for them, and
Yes,
they know they can rely on you.
right? And going back to communication, what have we learned in here about, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them proportionately. So we need to do a lot of listening, taking notes, asking questions, and letting that seller talk. And that's one way of building trust and rapport.
Also being consistent
Being
in your
consistent,
operations, so that
yes.
they know what to expect.
Yes, and starting right from the very beginning. I think being there on time, if you have a 9 o'clock appointment, you need to ring the doorbell at 9 o'clock, right?
Deliver what you promised.
Deliver what you promised.
You're gonna say you're gonna do this, then
Yeah,
Be careful,
exactly.
make empty promises.
No empty
Yeah,
promises?
be careful, make empty promises.
I think it's important to educate along the way. Today we listed your home and, we'll get a buyer. Once we get a buyer, you know, we begin the inspection period and this is what's gonna happen during that time.
Mhm.
And then when you get past that point, they're gonna, they're gonna present a list of repairs or whatever, and here are your options, along the way. I mean, to the next step, to the next step, to the next step. What's gonna happen now, we're gonna we're gonna fund and record people, what happened, you know, I've been approved, when do I get the keys? Well, this happens and then this happens, you know,
Mm-hmm. Explaining things as you go,
right,
right,
so they know what to expect.
okay. It says, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, at this point, I've learned a lot about you and you've learned a lot about me. During this appointment, we will both have questions or decisions to make. You are going to decide if I'm the right professional to sell your property, and I'm going to decide if we can collaborate to sell your house. With what I've learned about you so far, I know I would love to work with you. Is there anything so far that gives you pause about working with me? And if there is, handle that objection. If not, great, let's get started collaborating on a marketing and pricing strategy. Goal number 3, convey seller strategy dialogue. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm excited about the opportunity to market your property. With the features you've highlighted today, I've already got lots of ideas in my mind about how to generate excitement. I know I can sell your property. Is there anything we've gone over so far that you think I've left out or that concerns you? If yes, handle those objections. Great. Now earlier we talked about the decision you and I have to make today. I would love to work with you. After talking about the marketing strategy we just created, is there anything now that gives you pause about working with me? Great, let's get started. And then goal number 4, discuss pricing strategy. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, so far today it looks like we have developed a marketing strategy and a pricing strategy that will get your property sold in the least amount of time for the best price available. We have scheduled a photographer and we know where to place the sign in the yard. I would love to work with you. You mentioned earlier that you would be deciding today if I was the professional to sell your house. Is there any other information you need to make your decision? And then just asking, are you ready to move forward? We've had a lot of good conversations at this point, so I usually have a pretty good sense of where we are with the process. After the CMA, I say, based on what you've seen here, what do you think we need to price it at? If they give you an acceptable price, hey, we're on the same page, let's go ahead. All we need to do now is sign the contract. So as you can see, it's a progression of working through and asking for the business, right? Okay, where to go from here? Based on what you have learned, how will you develop or rework your presentation? What components and tools will you incorporate in your presentation? Most of us in here have been on a listing presentation, but not everybody, because we have quite a few new people. So what have you learned so far that is going to adjust your listing presentation from the way that you've done it in the past? Anybody? Any tools or techniques that you've picked up that you might use?
I think just listening more and letting them do the talking and really dive in, let them just divulge everything that.
You know, I think
an
that's
active listener.
That's interesting, and that's good, Kathy, because I think that we feel as agents we have to go in and control everything because we're the professional. And really our job is to listen first and hear what they say so that we can then, and I think a lot of this has to do with being able to think on your feet, so to speak. Depending on what they're saying to us, then we can adapt and develop as we go along. But listening is probably the most important thing we have to do.
Because I think I had experiences where it ended up biting me in the, you know what, for not listening thoroughly. You know, I wanted to start it, jump in and take charge.
Yeah.
And that really, through the course of the transaction, I could see where things happened because maybe I didn't listen like I should have. I need to
Yes,
take my
and
mouth shut.
we're probably all guilty of that. And I think that that's something you learn through practice, really.
And you know, something I do want to bring up, and it's kind of on the subject, but you know, again, you know, there's that anxiety to price it. The sellers are always thinking, oh, their house is worth more than what it truly is. And we want to, well, my personality is I'm a people pleaser, so I want to, and I know that about me, so I want to appease their feelings about the house. But what I discovered is, and this is really, I don't know, you know, when you pull up comps and you find a good comp that maybe even a little higher, but it's really a good comp.
Mhm.
And then you have a couple other, maybe that's the only comp, and there's a couple other comps that aren't so good. What happened to me recently was that I was relying on that one good comp, but the appraiser looks at 3, and everyone has their own style and the way they do it, but he took an average, and our appraisal came out lower. I was banking on that higher one. And so something to consider is, you know, what are the other comps, and maybe, you know, starting something lower. I mean, that's, maybe
Yeah.
that's a common thing that I should have known, but I didn't act on that.
Marcia, you talked about the presentation.
Yes.
I think of it as an upside down like pyramid.
Uh-huh.
And like at the base of the pyramid, upside down, it's the brand. So you talk about the brand, then you have the CMA with all the same 21 products on them. Then in the middle of the pyramid is the office, and you gotta be able to recite all the positive things and our history and the rich, you know, involvement with the city. And then at the peak of the pyramid is you, you know, and you always wanna highlight yourself, but I mean, that's kind of, I mean, there's so much more information about the office and the brand. You know, after that, you're the personal history and what you can offer them
Yeah.
as your strengths, both
Okay, for the sake of new people that haven't been on a listing presentation, and this is a question for everybody, do you try to plan how much time you're going to spend in the different categories? Getting information from them, talking about what we have to offer? Is it worth trying to plan out time like that? And how much time do you usually plan for a listing presentation? I mean, they can go from 10 or 15 minutes to 4 hours sometimes if you've got somebody that's really detail oriented.
When you're making dinner together.
I think it's probably scalable. I mean, if it's a hot commodity, you probably don't have to go into too much detail, but if it's something that needs a lot of work, and needs a lot of showmanship,
Mhm.
I mean, I think that might take a little longer.
Or if you have an analytical,
Yes,
client
Yeah.
that does analyze everything.
and sometimes you don't know until you get there, and they
Because I
don't.
have one, and, you know, they're looking at other houses, not just selling their house, you know, it takes 2 hours. Every time, it's 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah. So when you're making your initial appointment, if you say, you're asking for a good time when you can meet with everybody that's on title or all of the decision makers, and I'm gonna need at least 2 hours. Usually that's the average length of time that it takes for doing a presentation. I've got 4:30 this afternoon, or 10 o'clock or 3 o'clock tomorrow, which works best for you, and giving them some choices and some times. But do most of you say when you're making an appointment, I need a couple of hours?
No.
And I think that's very important, because my experience is the seller is usually in a hurry, and they don't wanna take the time. And I think it is important to take the time
Mhm.
and to not get wrapped up in the expediting it and really doing a thorough job. So I think letting them know ahead of time that this is gonna take X amount of time, when
Yes.
is a good time for you?
Yes. Okay.
Marcia, and I think you hit it on the head with it depends who you're working with.
Yes.
For me to sit with you for 2 hours, you're gonna have to be one entertaining human being. No, I'm serious. I mean, if Laura wants to spend 2 hours with me, she's gonna have to entertain me a little bit and keep my interest. I'm gonna have to
Believe
really
me, I didn't
like
want to
you.
spend 2 hours, that's what.
You know, I'm gonna have to really like, I'm not saying it's too long, I'm just using myself as an example. The listing appointment, to me, I don't think I'd wanna sit there for more than an hour, and if I'm gonna list it, 2 hours max.
Yeah.
That's just me though.
No.
So I think it's gonna vary,
It
you're gonna have
is.
to probably feel them out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some like to get as much done by phone or text, or, you know, emails, you know, because they don't have the time.
Yeah.
Sit down.
Yeah. Let's say you get there and they're ready to sign the listing. They don't want to listen to all of this stuff. They just want to sign the listing. So you get the listing signed and they're antsy to do something. You do have some obligation to go over some things with them. But if you've got the listing and this isn't the time to complete it, then set up another time. Once you've got the listing, that's your cue to go to work, really.
And
You can do
send
it, you
to
can do
them
it in parts.
advance.
The
You
most
can do it in
important is that
parts,
you acquire
yes.
the listing.
Right,
And then you can do it in maybe 2 or 3 other parts. 'Cause
Yes.
if you're gonna list a home, husband and wife both work and they have 4 children, second grade and up, they're usually involved in activities, sports, 7
Yes.
days a week, something.
yep,
But they're gonna go with you, so maybe you can come over, bring all the paperwork Wednesday night at 7 when the kids are doing their homework and we have 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And maybe come over Saturday in between soccer games for an hour or 2 and we can go over your marketing plan and stuff like that.
Yes.
And when we're gonna put it on the market and what we have to do to get it
yes.
on the market.
So let's talk about that for a moment. If they're anxious just to get the paperwork done, they can sign that listing agreement at any time. Your beginning date is the important date. So if you're going to do things incrementally like that, I would say have your beginning date be a few days later so that you can Talk to them about the necessary things. You can schedule a photographer. If they've got some work to do, that can be done. Just remember that the listing date doesn't have to be the beginning date.
So you go over with them, A, B, C, D, and E need to be done. You meet with them on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
You think you can have this already by next Wednesday, and we'll be
Yes.
on the market Thursday morning?
Yes. And I think that's one of the reasons, if you've got a pre-listing packet to drop off that you can drop by with some important information, that it will help them come to terms with this, to understand the process a little bit before your initial visit, and maybe give them some information. I think that could be very, very valuable. I want to talk about some of our stuff too as we go through here, because I think if we talk about the tools that we have available to us to interject into our conversation, maybe it will bring it all together a little bit better. But I don't know if anybody's actually read this book from front to back. This is the Our Unique Marketing Plan for Your Property, and it's got marketing information in here, but it's got a lot of other stuff too. It's got our mission statement, our business philosophy, and our very unique value to every buyer and seller. And it talks about why this company is important and what we're bringing to the table. I would say, at the very least, if you can make reference to some of these things in your conversation, or depending on how your conversation is going with that seller, know these tools that you have well enough that you can open them up and say, you know, I just want to point out to you, these are some of the things that our company is known for, what we do, how we operate. This is what sets us apart a little bit from the other companies in town, perhaps. But if you know this information and know when to use it, you can use it, and I think it will be helpful to you. When you're talking about an action plan, you know, there's 2 pages of things here that go into marketing a home. Everything that you do helps to market a home. And it's just so much more than a lockbox, a sign, and something posted in the MLS. We have to know these things in order to talk about them and to set us apart, because I don't think there's many companies around town that can offer the total package that we do. But if you're only selling the top layer of that package, you're probably doing a disservice to yourself and maybe to your clients too, because they don't know what they could have had if they don't choose you because. So I think knowing these things and using them in your conversations is very important to you. Has anybody had a chance to use the marketing book yet? Did you say yes, Andrea? Oh, no. Well, I didn't think so yet. But I hope you do very soon. Okay. Is it time for a break?
20 after 10.
Oh, 20? Okay, let's go for just a little bit longer and we'll stop at 10:30. How will you position yourself as the agent who helps get the most for the house in the least amount of time and with the least amount of hassle? What are you going to say? How are you going to do that? I'm on
Ask the
page
question again.
57. How will you position yourself as the agent who helps get the most for the house in the least amount of time possible with the least amount of hassle?
Bring the information that you need, so bring comps with you.
Okay. And I would say here, I think this goes directly to your positioning in the market. If we place your house on the market in the right position, it should draw interest very quickly. And when that happens, usually you get the highest price that you're going to get. And it helps to sell more quickly.
One of the things I've noticed, and I'll ask Judy and Ryan maybe to respond to this, is that if you overprice a house in the beginning and people come through it and they know it's overpriced, in my experiences, even if you lower it, those people will never come back. Because I think they kind of prejudge the seller, that he's gonna be difficult, that he's asking too much. Is that your experience?
Well, once I get a price reduction, I always call the agent. You know, I go through the list if they've shown it, and I let them know
Yeah.
the price reduction. But I always ask for feedback. You know, they enter your property, they get that little survey, and nobody fills it out, hardly anybody. So I always call the agent after the showing, and I ask, especially because when they call, I'll back that. When they call to make the appointment to show the property, even if it's vacant, now foreclosures are a different situation, but on the traditional ones, I ask them to call. Even if they don't get to see the property, because up front, I want them to ask, set the stage so that they can
I'm sorry.
I want to set the stage that I'll be asking for feedback, you know, because they're friendly with you to begin with, the agents are, because they want to get in to see the property. And so then I'll say, okay, yeah, 10 o'clock is fine, I'll let them know. Please let me have some kind of feedback from the client during the listing. And it's not common. So then I'll call them after the listing and get some feedback, especially if I know that it's a home price. And then I'll deliver that to the seller to let them know, oh, they loved everything about your house, you know, pricing is, you know, it's a little, priced a little high. And then I always let the agents know that we have room for price. But to answer your question, I know I'm going overboard with information. But, yeah, so when you're going in for a price reduction, so then you have all of this information to give the sellers. And you are right, as far as if it's overpriced to begin with, you kind of lose that buyer. You lose that buyer when they go in and the first thing, because they, for whatever reason, it's the mindset. When properties first hit the market, it's like you're going to a sale or whatever, you know, and you see that first day you want that, but if you go in 3 days later and it's still there, you just pass it over, right?
Right, that's a good example, that's a good illustration.
And it's just, it's a mindset, and they think they're getting something that, you know, it's hot to the market, everybody wants it, and after it's there, and it's been sitting for a while, it loses its appeal, for whatever reason, you know, it's psychology.
There is a lot of, we're in a psychology business, aren't we? Really? A lot of psychology in real estate. You know, this question goes back, I think, a couple of pages when it was telling us that we need to know our own statistics and our company's statistics, okay? You can pull up from the MLS the statistics for both yourself and the company and know what's our average day on the market. What is your average day on the market for the listings that you've had? And if you've got good statistics, this is exactly where you can use them to build upon your ability to get the highest price in the least amount of time with the least inconvenience for the seller, and make those statistics work for you. The other thing that I think about is agent reputation. I know every agent that works out in the field develops a reputation very quickly. And don't you know, those of you that have been in the business for a long time, if you see a listing come on the market by a certain agent, you get an immediate feeling, oh, they always overprice their houses. Their stuff always sits on the market for a long time. Oh, if I have people interested in this one, I know it's going to sell very quickly. And that creates a little bit of urgency for you as an agent, knowing that that agent's listings usually don't stay on the market because they're well priced. Right? Do you all think about those things?
Yes, there's a number of agents I can name to where when you see that listing price, you know you better hit it close.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're gonna miss it because they know how to price. There's
They
some
have-
in this building, the ones outside of this building, people like Paula Connor, who's no longer here, Ken Neufeld, a lot of the veterans, as soon as you see one of their listings, generally you know it's priced right,
Yeah.
and it's not gonna last long.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, any other comments? So what kind of a reputation do you want to build for yourself? And how can you do that?
It's very important, especially, a lot of agents do this, and I've been guilty of it myself a few times. Read agent remarks. Is there a dog on the property? Is there a CBS code? Certain showing times, appointment only. Agents will attest to this. It drives me crazy when it says, must call agent first for showing. You get a phone call at 8 o'clock at night on a Friday. Hey, there's a dog in the backyard. Did you read agent remarks? And that will stick in my brain for years to come. I remember from 2009 agents, though I'm no longer in the business, did that.
Mhm.
You know, don't go, I just read this the other day, I think it was someone in this office. Don't go on the balcony, it's unsafe. But I guarantee you, someone will not read that and their foot will go through the balcony. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's very good to, important, I should say, to build a rapport with agents because they will remember.
Yes,
They will remember.
yes, very true, very
Yeah, I had
true.
a seller that she wanted to start charging the realtors if they set off her alarm again, because, she was at her capacity before she starts getting charged. Because they wouldn't read that first of all, they have to call first,
Mhm.
so that the alarm can be disabled.
Mhm.
Because it was gonna be disabled each and every time. That was how she wanted it, so, you know, she made it difficult that way, but, you know, the agent should read that and do that.
This is kind of a revelation to me. I wouldn't think that you would have to tell people to read the whole listing sheet, know what you're showing, but especially to read the agent remarks and look for instructions. But this is a good point just to remind people, you've got to do that. If you're showing a number of houses, you should read those listing sheets all the way through, which we're talking about listings. If you're a listing agent, you want to have good, complete information. And please put some information. Don't you find it very frustrating when you look at an MLS sheet and there's nothing there as far as agent remarks or marketing remarks?
Yeah.
And it says something like go show, or
Yeah.
maybe they've got one
Or
photograph.
Tax go show, I hate that. I hate
You know what
that.
the worst is, right? Is that you set your appointments Friday evening, and but you can't get a hold of a single real estate agent on Friday evening.
No.
They show the next day.
Yeah.
That's the worst time to call. You gotta call on Thursday. You really kind of know what, set your
Yes.
appointment.
Also, I know everybody knows this, but I live in Clovis. And if my listing is in West Fresno, and I have to go check the lockbox, check the house to make sure it's locked, walk that house before you leave. Check every door and every slider, because they could have, go back and double check and make sure that it's locked. Because the next person that shows that house will call you and say, hey, that door was wide open, you know? So just double check that. It happens a lot
Okay.
more than it should.
Because we're in this area right now talking about this, and this is where our conversations have directed us, let's talk about how to prepare your sellers for these things. What do you say to a seller about showings?
Well, I set my lockbox up so that when they go in, my phone goes off, and if they have a smartphone, it goes off on their phone.
Yeah.
When they lock it, my phone goes off, their phone goes off, they're done. They know
Okay.
who's in there.
All right, but how do you prepare a seller when
For-
you're listing, in your listing presentation or after you've gotten a listing and you're now guiding that seller through the selling process? What do you say to a seller about showings?
Make sure everything's picked up, no dishes in the sink, countertops are clean,
Beds made?
beds made, no toothbrushes on the counter, just normal stuff. You
Right.
would think people would know to do.
Yes.
A lot of people don't.
A
Oh
lot of
my
people
gosh, I
don't.
have found some stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Put away
And
any
it's a good
personal
time to put
belongings.
away
Very
valuables.
important.
Yes,
Lock your
Yes.
prescriptions, put your prescriptions away.
yes. And,
And I also, I warned, like the lady that was very, uptight about her alarm,
Mhm.
that's the way she wanted for it to be set up for showing. I let her know, I let her know that there will be agents that are gonna come in and set it off. So just know that, because it happens.
yeah,
So she
Bingo.
was aware.
I think it's important that you set them up for failure.
Right.
Because then they're not gonna get as pissed
Exactly.
when it happens, because we all know it's gonna happen, and all you can do is explain them in a nice way. You're gonna do your best, but you can't control the ones running around backwards.
yes,
Because there's a bunch of them, and I think that's important to prep them nowadays, that you're gonna do the very best you can. But people, you can only control them to a certain amount, and that way it'll set them up for, if the alarm goes off, or if they accidentally leave a light on or something, I don't think they're gonna go through the roof as much as if you didn't prep them for that. You don't have to get all negative on a 10-minute speech, but just let them know.
yeah.
Because that's something that I always did.
Or what you can do, let's say if you have an agent that calls you, hey, I'm new to the business, and this is it.
Are we ready? Are we ready again? Is that working?
More
It's
cowbell.
working great.
Okay.
More cowbell.
That isn't a cowbell, that's a school bell.
You know, cowbell was a routine from Saturday Night Live.
Oh,
And what was his name?
Will
What was-
Ferrell.
No, Will Ferrell and the other guy,
Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken, yeah.
okay, everybody. We're kind of at a crucial point because our next chapter is going to be something entirely different. And I want us to be ready, really ready, when we get to the new part. So at the bottom of page 57, it says, "My evolution as a Titan. Abundance is everywhere." I don't even think about the competition when I go in for the presentation. The listing is mine if I want it. That really is supreme confidence, isn't it? Knowing that you're prepared and that you've got everything you need and everything behind you to do a good job for that seller. Confidence is really important. Are you looking for where we are?
It says my evolution as a Titan.
Uh-huh. Action above all. Part of my goal in capturing this listing is to apply the multiplying effect of listings to get at least 2 more separate pieces of business. That's an art in and of itself, isn't it? Confidence born of preparation. I know I can prepare all the stats, facts, and figures I need to make a compelling presentation. Solutions, not problems. The listing presentation is my first opportunity to position myself as a solution-oriented agent, and I see every potential issue as an opportunity to demonstrate to the seller my ability to help them through the process. Okay, put listings first with a great listing presentation. Do all of you have a listing presentation? We've been talking about all of the components, but have you formulated a presentation in your mind and practiced it so that when you've got that seller in front of you, you're ready to go and you know what to say and how to say it and how to control it?
That's why you need more than one, because all sellers are different.
All sellers are different, and what makes all sellers different?
Like we talked before, Some will say just bring the paperwork, we've agreed on a price over the phone, I agree with you. Just bring the paperwork, we'll sign it, you know what to do, you know what you're doing.
Okay.
Some will wanna sit for 3 hours and talk about if she will plan to do
Okay,
flowers.
and all of that goes down to personality
Right.
type and style of doing business, right? So you've got to be able to judge those people pretty quickly for what style they are and make it work with your own style, because every single one of us in here have our own style. Like John said, they've got to be really interesting for him to sit through or to be presented with something that is that long. A lot of people are like that. A lot of people would like you to come and bring lunch and spend the day with them.
Uh-huh.
And they love that. They need that. You have to figure out very quickly. But over and above all of that, are you ready? Is everybody ready? Do you know what you're gonna say? Let's do some role play. Anybody opposed to role play? Okay, all right. We'll get to the role play, but let's just get ourselves ready. What's the first thing, if you got a call right now, what's the first thing you're going to do? Somebody calls on the floor and says, I've got a property in Fresno, I want to sell it, can you help me?
Phone number and address.
Yes, that's a good start, Thomas.
Their name, yeah.
Their name? Okay, what else?
Verify for
Okay. What are you going to ask them on the phone then? Just those things?
Set an appointment.
Set an appointment, get a time, and go. Okay? Now, what are you going to do to prepare? You've got an address and a name and a phone number and an appointment time.
Prepare, look at the
Property
comps.
profile,
A property profile,
furniture.
and where are you gonna find that?
Tax records.
Tax records? Okay,
Who's on title?
see who's on title, yes? Yep,
Figure out if you're talking to the right person on title.
Yes.
Over the phone.
right? Yep, you might look at the mortgage history and see if there's a fairly current loan, is there no loan?
That's kind of hard because they're never right. I mean, the day they're recorded, they're right, but as they go, they're never right.
Well, at least you know what the beginning balance of that loan was. And depending on how many years ago, you can kind of figure about how many dollars a month are going towards the principal maybe. You can guess pretty closely.
Also see too, if how many times it's gone into almost foreclosure, and you kind
Yeah.
of can gauge where they're at.
Yeah.
It's really about that.
Yeah. If it's a property, a loan that's been on the property for 2 or 3 years, they're going to owe pretty close to where they started. But if it's several years old, you can calculate, use your own house payment as an example, if you have one, about how much principal is taken off each month if they're making the minimum payment. Used to be about $50 a month, I don't know. So you calculate that for how long the loan has been in effect, and the longer it goes, the more principal they're paying. But I think you can estimate fairly closely enough to give you an idea. Do they have enough equity in that property that they don't have to have a short sale? Is there some equity that will pay expenses and closing costs and that kind of thing? So now you've got that information. Nick?
An amortization schedule will tell you exactly, well, not exactly, but give you a very close idea of where they're at. You know
Yeah.
what year they bought it, you can look up the current interest rate at the
Yeah.
time, take the balance, and you can see how much they paid down.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can always go to the amortization schedule. Does everybody know where to find that?
In the
In-
loan docs.
That's the hard way. There's an easy way. If you go to the, isn't it links up at the top? Is that what it says? Or financial links?
Financial tools,
And there's
yeah.
an amortization schedule in there. And if you've got that tax sheet, it's going to show you, it should show you what the original loan balance was and how many years it's been in effect. And Nick is right, you can pretty well calculate if you want to go that far. But after a while, you'll be able to kind of guesstimate whether there's enough equity in that to do the things you need to do.
Can't you just ask them to?
Well, yeah, you can, but you might want that information ahead of time to kind of,
Guess.
yeah, prepare a little bit. Okay, so now you've got your tax information, you've got, all of those kinds of things. What are you going to do now? A CMA? Okay,
You need to listen to them. Oh, before you get there, you mean?
yeah,
Net sheet. Toolkit CMA.
yes. Okay, so you're beginning the preparation now for things that you're going to take with you, right? Okay. If you had a chance, when you had that first phone call, and it wasn't a real quick one on the floor, maybe you had a time for some discussion with that seller. Are you going to ask them some things like, their motivation, fitting in with their motivation? How soon do you need to sell? Are you moving out of town? That kind of thing, right? And that's going to help you too. Can you just tell me quickly, I'm anxious to see your house when I get there, but if you're going to do the telephone process and then you're in person with the seller, you want to get some information ahead of time so that you can prepare. Okay, so then you've got a little bit of information. Maybe they were anxious to tell you, you know, we've just totally redone the inside of this house. That's a real good tip for you. Or you might ask, have you done any capital improvements that I need to know about? I'm going to do a little research before I come. However you want to handle it, and whether you're going to ask questions before you go, whether you're going to go and meet with them, then go back and do your research once you have a chance to see the house. You're going to make those decisions for yourself, okay? So, now you've got a CMA, if you're taking one at this point, right? What else are you going to take with you?
Listen,
A listing agreement,
A lockbox.
a lockbox?
But agency agreement.
It'll be with it, yes. That comes bundled with your listing agreement. Okay. What else might you take?
your presentation,
Yes, your,
showing what our company can offer.
right? Yes. Now, if your listing is going to be, your appointment is going to be a few days away, you might want to drop by that pre-listing packet and give them something to look at. Remember that pre-listing is going to have some information in there, might have a sample contract that they can look at and start thinking about that whole process. And then when you get there, you will have your marketing plan ready to give them too, okay? Okay. So now you're ready to go. What are you going to do the day of your presentation?
Be on time
Be exactly on time, right?
or a little early.
Uh-huh. Where do you park?
On the
sidewalk.
street.
Yeah.
On the street, not in the driveway, huh? Park on the street? Believe it or not, we've had some calls that people dripped oil in their driveway and would we come and clean it up? And I think we did, didn't we, John?
I don't, just reminded me of my dad, because he always hated to see the repair guys and stuff on the drive.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so now you're standing at the front door. What do you do?
Ring the bell.
Yes?
Hand your card with both hands.
And you have your card ready, right? You don't want to fish around for a card. Once they open the door, have your card ready and be ready to introduce yourself.
Or take
Okay.
off your shoes.
Maybe. Would you ask?
I always ask if, especially if they're Asian and barefoot or Indian and barefoot, I always ask, would you like me to remove my shoes?
Mhm.
And they usually have a little
Mhm.
place right there for you to
Yes.
remove your shoes.
Or Mideastern?
Mideastern.
Yes. Or the northern part of North America? You might just ask anyway. Okay, then what? So they're going to invite you into the house. You're going to introduce yourself. And what are you going to do right away?
Find your way to the table.
Well, even.
Maybe go look around.
Where is
Can you
it?
show me?
Yes. I think there's two thoughts. Jeanette said, asked to look around the house. Before you do that, I would spend some time building some rapport. When you walk in the front door, what's the first thing you want to do?
Like,
Yes?
talk to them and get some information.
Okay,
Like the house.
remember the other day I said I went to a seminar once and it was all about building negatives and positives? You want to start building positives in the air as soon as you can. Okay, so how do you do that?
Compliment the house, the yard.
Great curb appeal.
Oh, yes, find something to compliment them on, right? Okay. If you walk in the house and you see that they've got children's trophies for sports, that's the first thing you want to talk about and say, I see you've got kids in sports. And they will pick it up from there, generally speaking, and get them to talk. Get them to talk about themselves and ask them questions that make them talk about themselves. You don't want questions, you don't want to ask them questions with just a yes or no answer, but get them to talk about themselves. If there is that kind of thing with trophies or pictures, or you see a piano, or you see a guitar in the corner, all of those are things that you can bring up in conversation and say, who's the musician in your family? Who plays the piano? Those kind of things, get them to talk. What's that going to do for them?
It's gonna make them feel comfortable. and
Feel
break the
comfortable?
ice.
Yes. Right away, they're going to feel like you feel like you're interested in them,
It's
right?
not so much a business transaction as it is a personal.
Right. You have to build that rapport, which is building trust in essence. You have to establish some of that before you can get down to business. And if they're the kind of people that you've got to spend 20 minutes on idle chit chat, some people are just geared that way. You've got to spend that idle chit chat time with them.
Do you show them your card when you come in?
Oh yes, you hand them a card as you come
First
in,
thing.
and introduce yourself.
Okay, maybe, I don't know if you show them your card, maybe, you try and be friendly with them, but, you're a realtor, you got to get down to business with them, right?
Well,
I mean,
yes.
You wanna start looking for the motivation for why they're selling their home.
Yeah.
You wanna start getting to talk to about, what are you trying to do here?
Yeah, but you've got to ease into that for us. First thing you have to do is establish some very important rapport and trust. If you get down to business too soon, it's
Right.
too soon. Yeah, and you'll be able to judge that.
It could be the case that particular person has that kind of
Yeah.
personality, they just want
Get down to business.
Yes,
Yeah.
but you've got to determine that first, right? Yes, and how do you
You can
determine?
build rapport that way too, just by reading them.
By reading them, and maybe asking a question. I sense that you're really anxious to get down to what we're going to do today. I'm ready if you're ready. And go that way. You just have to read the situation, no matter what it is, and make a decision based upon what you see and feel. Okay? But I would say, before you tour the house, this is what I would do. Before you tour the house, ask if you can sit down and chat with them for a few moments and get down to asking them the questions about their motivation, their reason for selling, what's their time frame, what happens if you don't sell the house in that time frame, those kind of things. Be sure that you take notes and find out what you can, and then ask to see the house. Can we go on a tour? Would you guide me through the
Yeah.
house?
Tour.
Mhm.
And then find out what they like.
What they like, what capital improvements they've made, why did they buy the house? What drew them to that house? Because the same thing might attract an expired. Okay? Okay, so what are you doing as you're going through the house and making notes? What are you really doing there?
I'm looking for maybe a beautiful flat screen TV that's connected to the wall, or a nice chandelier that they might not want to leave, and something that they might want to remove before they put the house on the market. And
But you're
so
not gonna
something you
talk
wanna
to them
leave.
at that time
No,
about that,
not,
right?
I'm looking.
You're making mental notes, or making notes on paper
Mhm.
maybe about chandelier in the dining room. Okay,
You're looking at the condition of the home and see where it should be priced at.
right,
based off the comps you
exactly.
just took.
Yes. This is your reconnaissance mission. You're there to find out what you can so that you can do a good job and provide them that buffet of information that they need to make a good decision. But you're right, Thomas, that's exactly what you're doing. You're
Condition of carpets and
yes,
flooring.
right. Now, are you doing a visual inspection at that
No.
point? No. Yeah. Okay. So then, what do? Go back to the table after you've had a chance to see the inside and the outside? Go back to the table and begin the process?
You have to explain the company you're representing is the best, that you're the best in the company, and that there's no way they're gonna beat you as being your seller's agent, because you're gonna get the best deal for the time and the money.
So Forrest, are you going to just lay it all out like that, or are you going to,
I don't know, I never sold anything, but according to the school, you know, that books that I read and everything, that's one of the first things that you need to do is get that card across, and like you said, establish some report, but don't spend all night on it. And then you gotta get down to business about, they have this whole list of stuff here, whole list of things that you have, that is very necessary, because like you said before, the seller maybe doesn't have a lot of time.
You know, he
That's
just
true.
told me that it's the best company and he's the best one.
I really-
I'm sold.
I really like what Mitch said about that upside down pyramid. So
Uh-huh.
you gotta talk about the company first, and then the history it has, and then the tip of the
Uh-huh.
pyramid is
Show
yourself.
them
so.
your agency agreement, that's something that you have to do legally. They have to know that, who you work for and what that's all about. And-
yes, and it's a disclosure, it's not really an agreement at this point, it's just information disclosing. Let's go back to Mitz's pyramid, because he was using that to build company benefits and tools. Let's flip that pyramid back over the other way. And how can you use that pyramid, depending on the placement point of that property on the market?
Yeah.
How would you use it?
Well, make them feel comfortable about yourself first by talking about your company, like Mitch said. Talking about the brand first, and then your own company and what you guys have done. And then, as he said, you're the tip of the pyramid, so then talk a little bit about yourself. It makes them feel better about working with you.
Okay. Yes, all of those things, Thomas. You can use that pyramid, and this may be a little bit early in your presentation, so just think about this for later. You can use that pyramid depending on the price placement of the house. If you've got a price on that property that is well below the median price, and we've established that the median price for this area is somewhere around 300,000, give or take a little bit, a little under, a little over, okay? So The median price is where most people move around. Okay, if you've got something, and as you go up that pyramid, it gets smaller, and that means that the buyers are smaller. There's a smaller number of buyers for those more expensive homes. And that's something to talk to a seller about how that is going to affect maybe their time on the market, and so on and so forth. The further down that pyramid and the wider it gets, the more people that you're going to have looking in those price ranges. Okay? So you might save that for a different time, but it just popped into my mind right then. What else are you going to talk about sitting at the table there?
Their motivation.
Their
Why
motivation?
do they wanna sell?
Yes.
So you need to know why they wanna sell, what their motivation is.
Uh-huh.
So you will determine how quickly, or, you know,
Yes.
do they wanna move quick, do they want to,
And you're going to find out where they're going?
where they're going?
Yes, and if they're going someplace except within our marketing area, that might be a real good time to say, by the way, if you don't have an agent there in San Diego, I know a lot of people down there that I can refer you to. I can find the best agent for you if you would like to represent you. Offer that as a service, and of course it has benefits that you get a referral commission, but always remember to offer that service, finding them an agent wherever they may be going. Okay, so you've got their motivation, you've got all of that, and you're ready to move forward with what you are going to do and have to offer. How are you going to say that? What are you going to say?
Maybe you wanna know if they had experiences with real estate before.
That's a real good point, Forrest. That's excellent. I think that's one of the things that I would do next, even before you get into what you're going to say, because it could affect what you're going to say. If you ask them, have you bought and sold properties before, and what kind of an experience did you have? That's going to tell you, no matter what they say, good or bad, it's going to tell you exactly how you have to benefit those sellers with your services. It's going to tell you what you have to do. So let's go through some of those. What if they said, we had a horrible experience with our last sale, and you ask why? Because we saw the agent the day that we listed the property. They put a sign. We didn't hear from that agent again until she brought an offer. And that offer was so bad, there's no way we could take it. And she made us feel like we were horrible for not taking that offer, didn't offer us any advice about it. And then we didn't see her again until the listing expired and they came and picked up the sign. What does that tell you? How are you going to handle that seller? What's the first thing that should come into your mind?
Keep them in good communication.
Communication?
Explain how you communicate.
Yes.
Weekly,
Promise them
if
you
not
won't do
multiple
what they
times.
did.
Sorry for that terrible experience, but we're gonna do everything we can to make sure that you don't ever encounter that.
And in their mind, they're going to think, well, that sounds good, but how are you going to do that?
Well, then we refer back, we have everything in the listing presentation, you can see what our company does.
Yeah.
You have your information there as far as what you're going to do.
Yes.
And then I'm going to always stay in contact with you.
Yes. And you're right, Judy. Never belittle that experience or that agent, but say, I'm sorry you had to go through that. I have a whole presentation here to show you how my company and I differ by the kind of service that we offer. And I think by the time we get through, you'll see that there really will be a big difference. And your satisfaction is the most important thing to me. And I realize that communication is of utmost importance to you. And then get into your presentation. If that seller said, you know, we couldn't have had a better experience, We loved everything about our agent. They were always there, they did what they said they were gonna do. She called me all the time, or he did. There isn't anything that was a negative about that experience. We got a great price. We were just totally happy. Our only problem is that she lives in Dallas now and we're here. So how do you handle that? What are you going to do?
Ask her what are some of the good things she did for you.
Yeah, what did you like about the experience?
Well, and they just told you, she always communicated, she came through on all of her promises. We got better, we got exactly what we thought we were going to get for that property. Everything was a positive. That's telling you she set the bar real high. You've got to be,
Not that lower.
or higher. Your service has to be impeccable. But isn't it nice to know that going in? They've told you exactly what they need. A lot of communication, price it right. They don't want to dilly-dally on the market with that property. They want to get the best price, and the best price will sell in the quickest time.
And two, sometimes a past agent could have been from 10 years ago.
Yes.
You might have known that agent.
Yeah,
This
maybe
is
so.
why, being a realtor, you follow the code of ethics, treat everyone fairly and with respect.
Yeah,
Because you might have been friends with them somewhat in passing, and you
yes.
can call that agent in Dallas and say, hey, I'm listing Mr. and Mrs. Smith's house. I think you could drop them an email or something saying, I'm up for the job, this agent will treat you right.
Oh,
I've done it.
yeah,
And if they remember they did a transaction with you or showed one of their properties years ago, and you were pleasant, respectful, followed instructions, they'll call that Mr. and Mrs. Smith and say, hey, Judy will do a great job for you. She'll work her butt off, and she's with a great company, and
Yeah.
it worked.
well, that's interesting. I haven't heard that technique before, Ryan, but that's a good idea,
But
if possible.
it can bite you, and I'll use an example. I apologize. I was with an elderly lady in February in Stonebridge. Everybody know where that's at? Mostly original owners. And her son, I've done a lot of investment properties, and she was moving into retirement. He called me and said, Mom's gonna list her house, moving in her own home. She left me free and clear, clean as a whistle. That was her 3 times. She was 90 years old. Great lady, sharp. And I asked, this was a mistake, and it got me. Her husband was deceased. When you guys bought this, who did you use? Helen Smades in 1979. Helen's been in the business as long as I've been alive, or longer. And I said, and I don't know Helen? And she goes, I just feel terrible. Helen lived next door. And guess who listed and sold that property? She had 5 county. It still bothers me. But that's when asking about who helped you before.
Yeah,
And I had no idea that agent was involved 30, 40 years ago.
But it will show in the tax records who sold.
It was new construction, so
Oh.
it didn't, yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
okay,
Hope that helps a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, if their past experience was very positive and very good, your thing as you go into your listing presentation is to show how you're going to be able to duplicate that experience or even make it better for that person by what you've got in your toolkit, right?
My first listing experience, I showed up at the house on time. I talked to the lady, she was very nice, and she said, when I was finished, she said, I am interviewing another agent at 2 o'clock.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I will be in touch with you. I didn't get a call from her. What's the broker's name at Coldwell Banker? What was his name?
George Murphy.
George Murphy. George Murphy called me at 10 after 2 and said, I offered to call her and tell her and let you know that she's chosen me to take the listing.
Oh, what a good.
And I called her back and I said, I just want to know what I did wrong. She said, well, he asked me who interviewed me, and I found out that you've only been a Realtor for 3 weeks. And he told me you'd only been a Realtor for 3 weeks and I need somebody with some experience. So that was the end of my,
You know,
Was it
that,
true?
it was true.
Yeah.
I was 3 weeks into it, my first listing experience, and George Murphy called me and told me, you don't have to worry, she's not gonna call you back, I already took the listing this afternoon. It was, call me at 2:15, he got there at 2 o'clock.
Marcia did talk about this at the meeting. They said, one of the techniques that the lady had used, and I don't know if I can get away with it, but, said, oh, you're gonna, are you accepting all the terms in which I've presented to you, and, that sounds fine and everything. Well, we're gonna interview some other agents. You go, we work with other agents all the time, if you'd like, let me know what those other agents are, and I'll let them know what we listed. And, I'll make sure we're in contact. And I was like, man, I don't think I can say that, but that's what the person said.
okay,
Well, I had my little book and I checking everything off as I talked, kind of going through the list and I thought I did okay. I didn't think I did great. I thought I did okay, but it was kind of I didn't really do the brand thing. I really didn't talk about the brand. I probably maybe didn't sound as sure of myself as I could have, but I did say we have a lot of agents at the office that
okay.
you get more than me.
I personally think Mr. Murphy made a mistake too and broke the code of ethics, because he never should have talked about another agent in a negative way, and although he maybe
It
didn't say
wasn't
anything.
really negative. He just said she's brand new.
Doesn't matter.
How would he find out that fast that she's brand new?
Oh, because he knew the people.
They have,
All you
brokers
to do is
have
bring up
access.
Your license record, it'll show you when
But
you're
on
first
his-
licensed.
Brokers have more
He
access.
said, hold up, let me look up this agent's info, and he looked
Yeah,
up her
brokers have a
info.
different access than we do.
They might have
So is that what he did then?
You can do that right now. You can do it very simply. You go on a DRE's website and bring it up and say, here we go.
So in that listing appointment, he went and said, who's the agent's name that interviewed you before? Okay,
Yeah.
let me sit here and look up their info.
You could.
That's what he did?
Take 30
In this
seconds.
case, he may have already known who that he was.
Nobody
Yeah.
knew me.
Oh.
She's 3 weeks in the business. and doesn't know it.
Well, and that may have been a clue too. He maybe said, who's my competition? But
They won't tell you.
to me, a good agent would not say, don't use her, she's too new. A good agent would say, wouldn't say anything, he would just demonstrate and, yes. He would demonstrate his ability through,
Well, I wouldn't have known, but the seller told me, you didn't tell me you were brand new.
well, let's talk about that because we have a lot of brand new people. Maybe put that on the table early,
First thing I tell them.
yeah.
First thing you tell them.
I'm a
Hey,
brand new agent, but guess what? I'm
Thank you
with
for
a
the
company
opportunity.
with a 60-year history
Yeah.
that does 0.5 to 1%, in the top 0.5 to 1% of all Century 21s. We do a lot of business. I have a company behind me with excellent tools that are made for buyers and sellers. We can do everything to get your property sold, and I may be new, but I've got a lot of time to devote to you as I build my practice. And I'm dedicated to you like nobody else can be.
Yeah, I
Right.
think figuring out the way to put it as a new agent is what's gonna sell it for you. Cause I mean, just saying new agent in general, they're gonna be like, should find
Like
somebody.
the middle part of the pyramid is how the office will
Yeah.
support you if you need help. If you need a second opinion, that's all I did right here. So, hey, the manager Mitz will come over here, give you a second opinion, and reposition the listing. And we're not right on. We'll get a second opinion from somebody from the office.
Yeah.
Marcia, but there's a lot of people that have experience in business, so they have to use their background too. And they
Yeah,
may
that's a
use-
good point,
They may
Carmen.
be new to real estate, but I'm a professional and have, 10, 15 years experience in this field,
Yes.
that helps me in what I'm doing now, my chosen career, so.
Could everybody hear Carmen? She said, use your past experience as, if it was a relatable field and you can use that experience. I may be new in real estate, but I've done basically the same thing for X number of years in my last profession. I'm not new to sales or to marketing, whatever. But if it works for you, go ahead and use that. Okay. So you're sitting at the table, and what's your next step?
It says here you wanna establish if their, what their social media skills are. Because when you start requiring information from them and stuff, if they can present it on the email or do the face, then that's gonna be good for you, and it'll be good for them because you can save a lot of time, and then you got the information that you need, like how much you own the property, title policy, is their CC&Rs, current tax bill, Mellow Roof's information, current utility bill, and stuff like that. If you can, meet at another time and they have all that, and you can get it on the internet, that's good. Otherwise, you're gonna have to tell them, well, you're gonna need this, can they have physical stuff like that?
Forrest, do you mean what their computer skills are, not what their social media skills are?
Well, computer skills and
Yeah.
social media skills, in other words, will you be using the computer with this particular person?
Yeah,
as opposed to driving
that's
back out,
technical
back and
skills,
forth
not
with mail or
social
something.
media. Technical skills
Yeah.
with computers. Are you computer savvy?
That makes sense.
That's a good question.
That makes sense for it. Okay, then you would have to drive out to their house. I did that one time for fire and another listing, but I had to go out in person and take the contract. And
Yeah, because the one I'm working with now, she only has a phone.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
Okay. What next? Where are we going after that?
Are you
Okay.
ready to-
Close the deal? Are you
We,
ready?
you could, and it depends on, yes.
Are we past pre-qualifying now? In other words, you gave me a pre-qualifying packet, and they've given you everything, all the information that you need? Is that where we're at now? You've got everything?
Well, hopefully. And your list there is in that pre-qualification.
Okay, I'm gonna come up with the listing agreement then.
Yeah, that would be a good time, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. The best way to hone these skills are to say the words out loud. So let's do a little bit of role play. And remember, in role play, we're all here working together and learning together, and there's not a right or wrong here, but there could be a right or wrong if you're out in the field with a seller and you haven't practiced. Okay? So we need 2 volunteers. Who would like to volunteer? We need 1 seller and 1 agent. Maybe some of the experienced agents would like to show the new ones. Oh, I love volunteers. You know, if you don't volunteer, I get to pick. Okay. I'm going to, oh, Sheila, I'm so glad you joined us. You just came right into my line of sight. Since I saw you first, I'll give you choice. Would you like to be buyer? I'm sorry, seller or agent?
I'll be the seller.
You'll be the seller? Okay. How about if Melanie is your agent? Oh, it is. Okay. All right, so we've got a buyer and a seller and a home to sell. It's all yours.
We've all participated already. It's your turn.
So let's be at the front door, okay? You've done everything, you're at the front door. Knock, knock, knock.
Hi. Hi.
Melanie, you're a seasoned pro. You do a lot of listings.
My mind's scattered all over the
It's just the fact that you're being put on the spot.
Yeah, I
Fixing
know.
you up.
So Melanie, I wanna sell my house, you know, I really need to get out of town.
We need to price it according to the market. Mid-range, not too high,
Well,
no. No.
I'd really like to be gone in a month, can I do that?
It might be possible if we get people moving.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
We're from, we're
Yeah.
not gonna try to sell it 45 days, definitely not.
If I'm not here, can you still sell my house?
Yes, we will put a lockbox on the door and all our 4,000 plus agents that are part of our MLS will have access to it. We will also tell you when you're in the door, when they show your house, and I can check out and find out what they can have.
So I don't need to be in town, I can completely move out and you'll still, you don't need me.
That definitely can work, yeah. That works. Send that anytime. We have access to email and we sign in the computer and all that stuff.
Mhm.
It's a very convenient.
Sure. So I've talked to a few realtors, just wanna ask you, you know, what is special about you or your company?
Full time. So the company has been around 60 years. Central 21 is everywhere around the entire world. So even people in Asia know we're all connected. So they understand the company. We have good marketing, the best in the business, I think. And have lots of ways to get your home out there and get it seen. So that,
Do you think I can get 500,000 for this house?
we have to look at the comps again. I'm not ready for this.
You know, what I would say to that is, you know, I really, before we get into discussing what the price is gonna be, and I like to talk about competition and how she's entering into a competitive market, and it's really about that. And I think if we sit down together and look at these houses around you and what they're selling for, that's gonna help both of us come to terms of, you know, where, even if in your mind,
Yeah. We have to be aware.
um,
But you really never know what it's going to do until you actually get set up. What you're doing. It's just talking about it, see the comps, doesn't say what the house has, but the other house doesn't. You don't know that.
That's why you go before you go,
Well-
first time.
Yeah.
well,
Drive by.
the other agent told me that he could get the highest price for me of anybody else.
He's not looking out for your benefit at all. Only his. He might be wasting his time. Yeah. You might never see him again. They'll put that sign up and you won't see him at all, and the cost you sick. Or if you get it accepted, you go to the next one, and you face it and you tell you can start all over and you lose time on the market. Especially if you've got to move. I would not prepare for this.
Okay. All right. Let's, it's 11:30. Are we ready to stop for today? But I want you to have some homework because next week we're going to go into the second half of our book and it's a totally different thing. We're not learning, we're doing. I want you to feel comfortable with everything. So on Thursday, we're going to do some more role playing because everybody needs a chance. I would say go home and talk to the goldfish or a spouse or whoever you want to talk to or whatever, but do some role playing and say these things out loud. Maybe get on the phone and talk to your own voicemail or something so that you could hear what you say. But talk to somebody, because if you're talking to somebody, they're going to have, it's more of a real life situation. They're going to bring obstacles and questions and all kinds of things into that role play. It helps you to learn to speak on your feet and to think about these things so that you're ready. But remember, if we don't role play here, you role play out there when it really matters and you might miss something. Thomas?
I do like the little bit of role playing you want to get into, because that's basically what it is. It's nerve wracking and getting over your nerves when you're in that situation.
Yes.
Listening to them and being able to kind of wing it through the situation too. You gotta watch everybody and fill out every seller too. Every seller's different, so
Yes.
I do like that. It helps you get the nerves out. Nobody's perfect. Everybody's gonna mess it up. And
That's
maybe
right.
you won't mess it up, but
So true. So practice, and we're going to do more of this. If anybody has a listing presentation and you would do it for the class, that would be wonderful. We would like to see somebody do a really nice listing presentation. Forrest, you ready?
Yeah, I have a question. It's
Okay.
Because, you know, I'm trying to put things together if I ever go out on a listing or whatever. But, see, in this, Century 21 thing.
Yes.
The first page, somehow between you and the seller, you have to present this list to them according to Century 21. Please, property owner, please take a few moments to review this checklist and have these items ready for your meeting with your Century 21 Watson representative.
Yes.
Look at it, it's awesome. This thing, if I was, you know, like, but I like it because if you're the seller and you realize if you wanna get down to the, you know, get this done instead of playing games, you gotta have all this information, right?
Yes. All of it that pertains to that property anyway. Yes, and eventually you'll be getting that. That's something to give the seller ahead of time to help them prepare for your appointment. Because if they have to hunt for those things while you're there, that takes a lot of time, or you might have to wait to get it later, something like that, but yes.
So this may be something that you would email to them if they were good with the computer and you understood
Yes.
that over the phone.
Right.
Tell them I'm gonna send you a pre-listing qualification sheet that'll help you get things together. And the more of this information that you have, the faster and better things will go with it.
Uh-huh.
Is that a good way to explain it?
Yes, it's really not a pre-qualification. I think the term on the front is the prelude to the listing. So it's something that comes before,
Yeah.
and it is just a guide for the seller, some information. Remember, you want your bio sheet in there too. So if anybody comes prepared to do a presentation on Thursday, that would be excellent. Everybody should come prepared that you've rehearsed. Okay? All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you Thursday. I expect to see as many people on Thursday as today.
I know, don't you think, right? It's only gonna help us sharpen our skills.
That is true.